if I keep showing up, I'll either succeed beyond my dreams or fail beyond my dreams, and both will be better for the work, better for the audience. Because if I fail miserably, like in a way that I couldn't even imagine, the audience will laugh from a very deep place. Because it's actually not a controlled failure. Most work is a controlled failure. When someone's truly, truly lost, and you can see it in their eyes, and they are in a place where they've never, ever been before, and they have no idea what to do, and they do something from their depths, and then it still doesn't work, the audience falls in love with them.
Welcome to Voices of Esalen. I'm Sam Stern. Today my guest is Jet Eveleth. Eveleth has studied integrative medicine. She's studied traditional Chinese medicine, as well as meditation and psychotherapy at Harvard Medical School. Meanwhile, she's also trained as a clown. She's toured with Second City and performed in the wild spectacle of Absinthe in Vegas. And it just makes me think, because in a culture that seems to reward control and polish, Jet Eveleth invites us into something far more dangerous than that, which is play. At places like Esalen, she teaches sacred clowning, which I dipped into for a morning. And I got to tell you, it's not all about red noses and bicycle horns. It's about vulnerability. And sometimes it's about failure. But mostly, I think, it's about that strange medicine that arrives when we start to drop the performance of being competent, of being composed, and of being spiritually evolved. Jet Eveleth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Wow, you said it better than I could ever say it.
My goodness, thank you. Well, so Jet, is clowning spiritual practice for you?
For me, it is. And I felt like I met some amazing teachers along the way. Here I was showing up to something called Clown, and these teachers were more present than anyone else I was meeting, and they were somehow more plugged in. And I was like, I think this is where I belong. It would start with playing hours and sometimes I would say at least an hour warm up of dodgeball or kickball or soccer. We were getting into a flow state before we would ever start the work. And I was like already taking to it. But then the actual work was about showing up, being present, to no longer hide. And so I was like, how could this not be spiritual?
Well, let me ask you in specific. I mentioned that you studied clowning with Philippe Gaulier, who apparently he just passed away recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
He also taught a lot of famous people, Sacha Baron Cohen, Emma Thompson, and from what I understand, he believed in this concept of finding your idiot. Can
hmm
you talk to me about like his style and what you learned there?
I think in essence, we find our idiot, we don't develop our idiot. Our idiot already lives in us. And are we willing to expose something about ourselves that people find funny, even if we aren't shaping and controlling it? Like we get to find out what people react to, and we have to live there with them if we want to be funny from our depths. Now, if we want to be, funny in a controlled way, like scripting, comedy of kind of like satire, that's totally a different business, and it exists separately. I mean, there's a great clown teacher named Doc Brown, and he always goes, it's comedy, it's just not clown. And I think that's a great way of saying it. There's a lot that's comedy, it's just not clown unless someone is hurting a little bit, and it's usually the clown.
Mm,
You ache a little bit because you're exposing yourself.
right. Is that part and parcel of what clown work is? Is it about exposing?
Well, and I'm careful to use the word exposing because what happens early in clown is everybody just gets naked at first, That's okay. But what you really want to be is energetically naked, where you're not so in control of how you're being perceived, but you just don't care
Mm,
because you want people to have catharsis. And
right.
the most common catharsis is deep laughter. But I learned from my teacher, Paola Coletto, a brilliant teacher who had studied with Philippe for so many years. And she had a school in Italy. And she would say, it's not laughter is part of it, but it's really about activating the audience, getting them to feel close to self and having the full range of the human experience from the seat
Mm,
in the audience.
mm,
And that includes laughter. And that opened it up to me to be like, oh yeah, actually, if I can get them to cry, then I'll get them to laugh even harder.
mm. So which were you able to access first, the ability to make the room laugh or the ability to make the room kind of like feel and cry?
Well, the thing that happened to me is I kept feeling the wild horse that wanted to come out of the stable first for me when I was on stage was sadness. And I kept being like, no, 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 that could never be funny. And then Paula said to me, Charlie Chaplin and Lucille Ball had great careers with sad clowns. And so I was like, oh, sadness is funny. So I started letting that sadness out. And the key is when the sadness comes out, you have to be able to witness it. You can't be too attached to it because otherwise it's just acting. If
Oh,
you're just
yeah.
crying, then the audience is like, yeah, this is sad. But if you can cry and be confused by it, if you can be lost in it and you can be at the same time far from it going, what the hell is happening? The audience can see that distance. And so they'll laugh at your tears. You know how they say tragedy plus time equals comedy? Well, tragedy plus space also equals comedy because time we can't control. Like we can't wait a certain amount of years for something to be funny. We're not in control of that. But you can distance yourself from your pain and watch it with curiosity. And the audience can see that in your eyes, that you're not attached to your pain. You're like
Ah,
having it.
right.
But you know, like when little kids are crying, but they're somewhat crying for the candy, and you go, oh my God, it's so cute because they are crying real tears, but they're okay. That's what's happening in clown is we're crying real tears, but we have a split brain. The split brain is part of you is having the human experience to the fullest. And part of you can watch and go, oh, I'm only here for a second. Your spirit's watching.
Did you have, at what point in your sort of acting trajectory or life trajectory did you discover clowning? Had you already had a robust sort of like exploration of comedy in general?
I did. I was at Second City already, and I was already at this place called the IO Theater in Chicago. And I was doing improv with a group of people that we were doing clown. We just didn't know it was called clown. So we were playing emotionally, we were playing physically, we weren't cerebral. There was a lot of momentum in it, you know? So we were having the time of our life. And one of the guys from my group went off and took a clown class. And he came back and he's like, Jet, they're doing a thing that you would love. And so then I went and took that class with this group called 500 Clown that had created these beautiful shows at the Steppenwolf, and they were like redoing Shakespeare as three clowns.
Mm,
And
mm.
it was a huge success. And so when I would study with them, I was like, oh, all three of them would teach too. So you had somebody on every side of you kind of not allowing you to escape the work. There'd be like someone touching you, someone directing you from the back of the theater, and somebody else whispering on the side of the stage. So you felt so supported, by these three clowns trying to get your clown out. It was a cool experience. I wish everyone could have three clowns helping pull their clown out.
When you started to get interested in it, I'm imagining that there was this focus on the body, right?
Mm.
And it seems to, in your interests, that you have an enormous interest in body and in health. Had you already been there, been present to the importance of the body, or did clowning sort of bring it to another level?
I already had that focus as someone who practices yoga and meditation, but it definitely felt like an intersection because
Mm.
I was doing theater, but it was never as physical as I wanted it to be. And then I did clown, and Paola Coletto also said all theater is physical. Some people just don't know it. Theater is physical because you have to want what you want and you have to go after it. Otherwise, it's just boring theater. There's the physical theater and there's boring theater, you know? And I was like, I get it. I agree. Eventually, you have to fight for what you want. Could you imagine doing Hamlet without ever anyone touching or moving? All great theater is physical.
Right. Yeah, there's a three-dimensionality to it that is different. Do you think that embarrassment is a doorway to intimacy?
No doubt. I mean, I feel like it's the currency of clown, and you have to figure out what makes you embarrassed. So, is it pride?
Mm.
Is it going to edges that normally you don't dance on? Is it for so many people, it's different what makes them embarrassed. Some people could be very embarrassed naked, and some people feel more like themselves naked. Some people having to play sensual will activate them. And it's like, oh, good, that's information. So you have to keep experimenting.
What is it about you that makes you okay with exposing vulnerable parts of you? And in fact, I mean, most people would feel like, oh, being embarrassed in front of a room of people, that's my number one fear.
I think it might have something to do with my deepest love. And that deepest love I have is that belly laugh. And so if I'm embarrassed, but I'm hearing the belly laugh is so much more beautiful to me than the pain of my embarrassment. So I know the fare I have to pay is some embarrassment, but that sound will get me through weeks. Because that sound, it's like I always like to think that like I want to be a musician, I'm not musical. So my best bet is the next best sound to music is a belly laugh.
Yeah.
And since I can't make music this lifetime, I learned at a young age that that sound of people laughing really at me, not with me, because at you is a deeper laugh. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a much, much deeper laugh. Laughing with me is like we constructed it together, you're in agreement. It's that secondary laugh of like socialization. But
Wow.
the first laugh is being like, oh, you're my sibling, you're in my tribe. I'm allowed to laugh at my drunk uncle because he's my uncle. And so we laugh at him. And you only laugh deeply. I think you only really laugh at people you love. Oh, look at that baby who
Mm,
just is trying to walk and it stumbled. Or look at that puppy, that deep laugh of children and animals.
yeah.
That's to me is clown. It's partly pity and
Ah.
it's also partly though envy because we want to be so lost in the world. We want to be in a place that our heart has never been broken before.
You also studied with Eckhart Tolle, and I'm curious how if it did influence your take on clowning.
You know what I noticed with all my mentors, whether it's Eckhart or Wim Hof or, my actual clown teachers, they all laugh easily and they giggle. They're kind of giggling at everything and it's funny. I just didn't realize how funny it was. They realized it first,
Oh yeah,
you
Eckhart Tolle
know,
is constantly laughing.
and it's real. It's totally real. He knows that this is all a cosmic joke.
Mm,
He's in on it all
mm,
the time. And
hmm.
I sometimes forget and get really serious,
Ah,
and
yeah.
he's like, but it's not like it's not a nervous laughter. It's a laughter of knowing what's funny.
Mm,
And so being in his presence, his energy field is really wild. I love studying with people partly to feel their energy field.
yes.
When I first met Paola Coletto, I felt it. It was like a presence I had never quite felt before. And with Eckhart, I was like, I know this guy has a wild energy. And then you show up,
Mm,
and everyone in the room, you see everybody kind of in a weird zone because he drops you. His energy is more potent than all of ours. And I talked to somebody who does energy work, and he said what happens early on is you get tired when you meet an energy field that's so different than yours at first because your energy's sort of fighting it. And then if you can soften up,
mm,
you get energy from them.
mm,
But at
mm.
first you get almost tired. And I was like, you watch that. Everybody listens to Eckhart to fall asleep, you know?
If I was going to draw like the most simple sort of connection between Eckhart Tolle's work and clown work, I would say, oh, okay, he's the power of now guy. He is like being in the present moment. And I'm wondering like improvisation within the realm of clowning. How important is that?
It's the bread and butter of clowning is that you are here now and that trumps everything. And Paola, my teacher, her books that she would recommend were all Eckhart's books.
Mm,
She didn't recommend a lot of like clown books. She was just like, you have to read this Power of Now or New Earth. So that's what I would recommend when I used to teach clown at a university. It was like a New Earth. And it's like really about, or Power Now, that it's about coming into the here and now, which is so terrifying
yeah.
because the here and now is the unknown.
Yeah, I found improvisation in general terrifying. I've tried it quite a few times. I even took a class at the Groundlings, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
just this moment of like, there is no script. There's nothing to fall back upon.
Yeah, I think we're all terrified of the real unknown. The real unknown is this right now. If we wait a second. And improv has taught me that I always do my best improvising when I'm actually improvising because you'll always try to craft something just to protect yourself. And you have to let go of that thing of, yeah, but I got this just in case. Or maybe while
Yeah,
you're talking, I'll think about what that
yeah,
will always creep in. So you just have to keep, this is what I feel like improv is you're just moving stuff. You're just going,
wow,
and nope, not right now, not right now. I'm going to stay a blank slate. And what happens in the work, whether it's improv or clown, because there's a lot of overlap. We could talk also a long time about what is improv, what is clown, and where they overlap. But what I learned by practicing them is that if I keep showing up, I'll either succeed beyond my dreams or fail beyond my dreams, and both will be better for the work,
mm,
better for the audience.
okay,
Because if I fail miserably, like in a way that I couldn't even imagine, the audience will laugh from a very deep place
wow,
because it's actually not a controlled failure. Most work is a controlled failure.
uh-huh,
Very rarely. And it's why I love to teach because when I teach, I get to see some real failures. And I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful.
What constitutes for you a big, good failure? What does that look like?
When someone's truly, truly lost and you can see it in their eyes and they are in a place where they've never, ever been before and they have no idea what to do and they do something from their depths. And when they do it from their depths and then it still doesn't work, they feel this feeling of, I just exposed something and now it didn't work. And then the audience falls in love with them for
Mm-hmm.
being braver than the audience would ever be. And then the audience laughs at that. So the audience didn't laugh at the thing they did, which they did the thing, okay, I'm going to do something I've never done before. And the audience goes, no, that didn't work. But now we're going to laugh at the bravery of you doing something so dumb, basically jumping off a cliff for us. And then they get this delayed laugh that is much deeper. And then you see in their eyes change, it twinkles. You have to want that deep laugh. You have to be in love with that sound. And I see people when they get the deepest laugh maybe they've ever had, and they're like, oh my God. So you're telling me I had to give up everything. And when I thought I gave up everything, I went down to the basement and I found out there was more stuff there and I had to give that up too. If they are hardwired for that deep laugh, they come to life. We are taught to just present all the time. And so to me, it's a two-headed dragon. If the ego is present, the clown is hidden because you have to say, I know nothing. I'm lost. I
Mm-hmm.
am the child. I don't, that's the energy of the clown. And so what happens is the ego's so sneaky, they'll go, okay, we'll let you be bad in some ways, but we're going to sneak out and then show that you're good in these few ways. No, 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 no. You're not allowed.
It's almost like there needs to be a destruction. And from this destruction, like the phoenix rises. I got the chance to drop into your class on a Wednesday morning during the week long. It was so vulnerable. It was incredibly vulnerable in that room. But I feel like I bet there was some narrative that I missed out on. I bet there was some folks just completely like getting crushed, crushing themselves, and then rising up like a giant.
Oh, for sure we saw that. We saw that. And it was so fun to watch people because once one person pops, it's an invitation for everyone to pop because they went, oh, I just saw them bite it. But then I saw them come to life in a way that they were electrifying themselves.
Yes.
And they were like, I want that.
Yes.
Is Phoenix rising from the ashes is exactly what clown feels like. You have to give it all up to get it all back. My teacher, I asked Paola Coletto, I said, why when somebody's first finding their clown, why does it look really painful? And she said, when somebody's clown is emerging, it can look like that because it's almost like you've come home and there's an intruder in your house. And she said, but what you find out is they own the house and you're the housekeeper. So there's a schism there of whatever's showing up feels new and different, but it's actually your spirit. Your clown is closer to your spirit than your ego is.
This is like almost breaking my mind, breaking my. You seem to have like a really robust understanding of human psychology, which is interesting because you've spent an enormous amount of time studying traditional Chinese medicine. You have a doctorate in integrative medicine. Talk to me about like the tensions between those disciplines or maybe intersections.
I feel like it's far more of an intersection because Daoism is about yielding. And so you're like, oh, it's the same. And I don't know if you've ever heard like Alan Watts talk about Daoism. He's like, oh, these are the clowns of the spiritual world. And
Ah,
I was like, oh my gosh, all you got to do is keep walking the path and you find out that the stuff you love is all going to the same place, this place of play and freedom and presence or whatever we want to call it. I mean, I'm very obsessed with flow state and whatever gets me there. And so like clown and improv got me there, but so did Taoist practices. Qigong, or honestly for me, getting acupuncture,
yeah.
I was like gunk knocked out. I was like, whatever this is. My first acupuncture treatment, I was like, it dropped me. And so, and that happened, I found that very like 20, 21 years old. And I started doing improv around 18. So I was doing those around the same time, but just thinking of them as sort of separate. So when I moved to Chicago to do Second City, I thought, well, you know what I'll do? Maybe I'll work for an acupuncturist. So I stopped at an acupuncture school and the woman said, actually, we're opening up here. Why don't you just work here? So I worked at the acupuncture school and then they said, just take all the classes for free, whatever you want to take. So I was taking, these classes during the day, which was so kind of them to let me study it for free. And then I was studying interdisciplinary arts at night at a graduate school. And then I was doing shows, my improv and clown shows. So I was just very like, nom, 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 which is just my hard wiring. I just love to learn.
Okay, well, how does your master's in TCM, your doctorate in integrative medicine, how does that show up in your life right now?
In simple terms, I live a very routine life. Like every day I do the same thing. So I'm not a very social person.
Uh,
I identify with these Taoist hermits who go off in the woods and they just try to live forever. I'm like, ooh, that sounds great. It's like for me, playing with formulas, herbal formulas, and practicing my yoga and my energy work, my meditation, walking my dog. I don't have much time left to do anything else.
yeah.
Like there's no shopping.
Mm.
There's no watching television, only because I don't want to move any of those things. I got hooked on Joe Dispenza. It's a very specific euphoria. And I've studied lots of different styles and I still go back to them at times. But when I started studying Joe, I felt, the only word I can say is a very specific euphoria
Yeah.
that my energy just felt like it was
Wow.
building my energy. And then I went and did his coherence training,
Mhm.
healings. And the results I saw on people who were sick were so profound. So now I'm using that energy work in my acupuncture practice because I'm looking to see people get better. That's the most important thing to me. So it's like figuring out what he's practicing and pulling some of it over. So now I'll only take patients who are willing to meditate. That's like a new thing because I want them to get better. And if that hard line helps them go, okay, yeah, I'll try it because I'm a believer. I'm a believer that everyone can get better.
If you've been waiting for the right moment to plan your next Esalen trip, now might be the time. All of Esalen's 2026 workshops are now published and open for registration, from meditation and movement to creativity, healing arts, somatics, relationships, and the deep inner work Esalen is known for. The full year is now yours to explore. You can browse the full 2026 workshop calendar now at esalen.org. Well, you seem to be doing a lot of things. Like if you have an acupuncture practice, and you're teaching clowning, and you're writing a one-woman show, I believe, it seems like you're pretty active.
And I'm writing a book on the intersection of play and Daoism.
It makes sense to me that you're a writer as well, because there is a lot of improvisation in writing. In fact, if you can harness that. And I was actually, when I was a writer, I was good at improv in writing. Never improv like out loud in front of people. Like I felt the gaze of people, but alone in front of the keyboard, I'd be like, I'll just write this crazy thing. And then, because I knew that later I could get rid of it if it didn't work.
That's actually what I love about improv is that it's gone. So
Mm,
when people say, can I record stuff? I go, oh, no. The book is a little different because you're right. I could like not release it. Who cares? But when people record stuff, I'm like, no, no, no. Now we're doing it for the future. And I only want to do it for right now.
wow. Okay. So you're more of a live performer, would you say?
Oh, totally. Like, I want it to be like sand that gets blown away and then I'm free. I
Mm,
always do my best work when I know it can't be captured because I think that's the deep truth. It can't be captured anyway.
mm.
Even if you try to capture it.
Right. Can you talk to me about your residency in Vegas when you were part of a
mm,
show that you did, I don't know how many a week, like 8 shows a week?
10.
10 a week. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty wild because what I learned from doing that show, like my mentors were like, yes, take that show because you are going to get your reps. That's the ultimate workout.
Yeah.
But they're like, but don't stay too long because sometimes people get those shows and then the money's good and you stay. And so all my mentors said, get in, get out, learn
Yeah.
what you can. So I was lucky. I only did 2 years, but I did 1,000 shows in 2 years. And what I tried to learn is this fine line between doing stuff that felt true to me and that was of my taste,
Mm.
but also of the taste of the majority of the audience. And it took a while to find out where we met because I would do stuff that was very sad because I love this sad stuff. And the audience was Vegas audience, not into it.
Not into it.
But then I could get kind of, okay, then I'm just going to say some swears and say some dirty stuff. And they loved it, but I didn't. And not because I like some potty humor, but it has to feel alive for me. Has to feel activated. It has to feel like of the child in me.
Mm.
And so I had to dance in this place where I had to find the place where I thought it was funny and they thought it was funny. And that was mostly playing with altered states where I would get myself revved up like a little kid and then just go. And then when you get, it's kind of like, when you watch Pee Wee Herman, it's his state. It's not what he's saying. Because if you write down what he's saying, there's no real jokes there. but his state is, "Rah!" And so then you're like, everything, it feels alive and activated and dangerous.
Mm,
And so I had to get myself in that state, and then I could just go, and they liked it and I liked it.
right.
So I learned that. I learned that no one's happy unless you both like it, which I guess is, the very definition of consent, is like both parties are in agreement.
Aha, I like that. Yeah. And did it take a toll, like the 1,000 shows where you're like, no, I need to just hide out in nature for 2 years?
That's exactly what happened. I had to go and live in the woods for a little while after to just calibrate. But I do think at the end of the day, it was good for me and I learned a lot, but I got exhausted from it because
Mhm.
ultimately it's still a business.
Mm,
It's different than when you're doing something like I do 2 shows a week and I think about them in a way. That's my dream, right? It's like being able to have some time off, think about it, cultivate it. And also it was a show that had, we had to hit certain things, we had to do certain stuff. So it was as artistic as it could be, really,
yeah.
for Vegas.
Yeah.
And I am such a like I'm just artsy fartsy that I still felt like, is this it? I'm always trying to make sure I'm pushing something to the very edge of the table, and I want it to fall off to go, okay, that's where it is. And in an actual professional show, you can't keep pushing something to the
Mm,
place where there's money to be made, and so.
right. For improvisation to really be dangerous, you need that freedom to bomb, like bomb big time.
Totally. And after those shows that I have in improv where I really bomb because I tried something so dangerous, I feel okay about those shows
Mm,
because those are the sacrifices to the gods. I
mm.
go, I know that sometimes it's going to hurt this much, but that's the faith. I have to go to this edge because there's information here.
What about bombing as a teacher?
Bombing as a teacher.
Yeah, like being so experimental that you're like, I guess that didn't land with the students.
You know, for me, part of what can prevent bombing as a teacher, for what I do to mitigate that, is to really, really incrementally introduce stuff because you're watching and you're reading what they're capable of.
Mm,
And at any point, if you're trying something and it's just too far, I'll just make a turn. I'll go,
mm.
oh, I
Right.
thought I was going to go there. So I can't go in with any sort of attachment to like, we're going to do this today, because that's
Interesting.
when you bomb.
Yeah.
Instead you have to read the room. Like, what are they coming alive to?
That is so incisive. I'm glad you said that. Like the ability to read the room and the ability to see like what's working and what's not working. That seems so crucial.
I'll tell you what, I come in with 5 plans. And if something bigger comes through, I always listen to that because it's more live. And I would say more than half the time, I'm doing something that I did not plan.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's it's pretty wild. And it's partly because I'm reading the room and also I'm reading someone in the room who's popping and I'm following that energy.
Ah,
And I'm following that because they're now the lighthouse for everyone else.
mm,
So why not follow that? So I'm like adjusting on the fly and it's always more fun and they can always feel it. They can always feel when you go, someone goes, hey, can we do that again, but with this? And I go, sure. And they go, oh my God, we can't believe that we're allowed to do. I'm like, you asked for it. There was a strong enough impulse in you to say, like, that was so fun. Can we do it again?
mm.
Sure. We got
Yeah.
time. 5 more minutes. And then they pop off more. And so then the fire got bigger. And now my job's easier because the fire is now going. And all I got to do is just shape a little bit.
Right. One thing that I liked about your teaching style for sure was that it was really clear to me that you were really amused in a good way by the work that the students were doing and you were a fan. You were like, I like these people. Like, you know what I mean? That felt really clear.
Oh, totally. And people are not dumb. They can feel when you love them. And the love you have for them sets them free.
Mm, mm.
Like, I don't know if you've ever studied anything by Phil Stutz. He's a psychotherapist, kind of to the stars. I don't think he even practices anymore, but there's a documentary about him on Netflix. And I've read all his books. And he loves his patients. It's very controversial, right? To say, I love you to his patients. And he's like a true hippie. I mean, his books are all these meditations and he gets phenomenal results,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he's a beautiful human. And I thought, why can't you love your patients? Like, isn't that, you can do it in a way with boundaries,
Sure.
but I love my students and it changes the work. But I figure out how to love them. And I don't come in like, oh, I love you. I just come in and figure out what I love about every single one of them
Yeah.
because them popping is the greatest pleasure for me.
Mm,
because I'm watching the best shows. Because
mm.
if I buy a ticket to a show and I see a show that is pretty fabricated and I don't get to feel the person underneath, I'm a little bored. I'm like, oh, I don't know who they are. I can't see them. But when I'm teaching, I'm the director. So I get to basically steer what comes out. And so I'm pulling the strings of their puppet and I'm like, yeah, well, how do I get them to come out? That's my job. Well, how fun is that? I'm playing chess with them. And so I'm getting them to come out. And when I see them come out, it makes me feel good because I'm like, I'm getting to do what I'm good at. I get to see them have some sort of cathartic experience. And then we all leave in a better mood.
Yeah. No, I think it's actually a really interesting and skillful way to hold a room responsibly. I think about that a lot because I do a little bit of teaching about the early days of Esalen when the encounter groups were an important thing. And a lot of that work is similar. It's about helping people step into an authentic sense of self, right? A transformative process. But it wasn't necessarily always held very responsibly. And when that is missing, then all of a sudden this edgy work sometimes feels irresponsible. But to actually care deeply and derive joy from the transmogrification of a person's soul, that's so powerful.
It's so fun. You know, it's like you're seeing their inner child, but you don't have to change their diapers. Do you know what I mean? Like I get the best of both worlds. I don't have to do all the dirty work because I love kids. But if I taught preschool, I would get the same sort of feeling of the beauty of
Yeah.
children, but
Hmm.
it's a lot more work.
Yeah, but it's easier to like children than grown-ups, I notice.
100%. But you can get into the mindset of seeing their child. And if you can get into that mindset, which is
Right.
changing your state.
Right.
So the big thing I do before I go in to teach is I work on my state more than
Hmm.
I do my curriculum
Hmm.
because I have so much curriculum that I'm like I've never run out of curriculum. I never worry about that. I have so much
Okay.
material,
Uh-huh.
just because I've done so much weird stuff in my life. I've got tons of stuff. What's more important is my state because when I come in a very specific state, that
Right.
spreads through the room. Just like we talked about Eckhart, his energy is dominant. And it's the same even as a practitioner of acupuncture. I need my energy to be on point. So when the patient comes in, I've got all this good chi because
Yeah.
I'm giving them my good chi through the needles.
Was teaching clowning at a place like Esalen different in any way? I was thinking perhaps, your stereotype of a person at Esalen is they're very sincere about spiritual growth. Does clowning interrupt self-importance?
I actually think teaching clowning at Esalen is easier than anywhere else because when I teach clowning at, say, a theater school, people can be a bit distracted about what clowning can get them.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, and then this will get me the show or the thing or it's not, like we can just so easily be distracted by what it can get us in the future. But no one at us, everyone's at Esalen is there for the experience.
Mm.
And that's when clown does the best,
Right.
right?
For
That's
this
when
for the self-development rather than professional development.
and for the moment, if they're studying clown to be more present, then it's like, oh, now I only have one job.
Mm.
Because let's say I teach at a clown school, I have to convince them that clown's going to help make them a stronger actor. It's two jobs. Esalen, I'm like, they're already on board. And everybody, I mean, my experience is everybody's showing up pretty light. They're
Mm.
an easy audience. They laugh easily. When I make dumb jokes, they're like, yeah, because they want spiritual teachers that are cracking jokes,
Right.
And so I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah, let's not take ourselves too seriously. And that's why when we get these names after what we love, I
Mm.
love the diversity in the names.
Oh, yeah, yes, yes. You're speaking about how everyone in your workshop receives a clown name.
Yes, and they choose it themselves through this ritual that we do. So we're celebrating everything from the
Mm.
poetic to the profane to the sacred to I want to celebrate it all. And I love ritual. Like ritual to me is one of the best ways to create container, to create
Ah,
sacred container. So I do a lot of ritual work. I just love what it does to the energy in the room and the energy in the body. And so I'm not a fan of formality at all. I don't like formality and I want to trade all my formality for ritual because I think that's actually what really elevates us.
wow. Can you give me an example of how a ritual could help create the container of a class not that I want to steal it per se,
Yeah,
but
you
yeah,
can.
but okay.
Let's first things first, it belongs to the universe. I don't think you can steal anything. I really don't.
Mm.
It's like because this work makes you realize like we're all in it together. Um, so for me, the example of the names, we do this naming ceremony, and at the time, people don't even know that it is their name, but they're basically focused. I get people altered, and then once they're altered,
Mm.
I get them basically to start, we work on love lists. And once we work on love lists, that elevates the state. And then we think about what we love most, what something that is sort of exposing, something that is specifically you, like something that you love and all your friends know you love. So let's say you're obsessed with pickles. It's like everyone knows you love pickles. That makes you feel very close to self to tell everyone, hey, listen, if you really knew me, you knew that like a thing about pickles, whatever that is, right? So we get it. Basically, you find something inside yourself that you don't really want to say, and you say it anyway. And
Mm.
this is the first step in being brave.
Ah, yes.
And then what we find out in these ceremonies is everybody celebrates bravery. It just historically always happens. Anytime somebody's like, they say it and it aches, the audience, oh, that you ached for us? Well, then maybe I could ache for you,
Right. I
right?
get it.
There's
Yes.
all this nonverbal communication of you were brave, maybe I should be brave. So what I'm secretly doing in any ritual is creating an environment where it would take more energy to be outside of it, to circumnavigate it, to
Mm.
not do it. I'm always, and that's with all my work, is that I'm like, it will take you more energy to get out of it. So why not be in the ache of the whole? Because you're all in the ache together now.
Yeah.
So if you've done any ice bathing, if you ice bathe with people, it changes it. It's totally different,
It's so true.
right? 20 people in ice, all your friends,
Yeah.
in the sun, you're like, this is amazing. You do it alone, you're like, this might be the most painful thing I've ever done
Yeah.
and kind of
You're like,
scary.
you're like, I might die. I need to get out. And you're out within like 20 seconds.
And you shouldn't do it alone. It's like you don't know what the ice is going to do to you. But right before I went into the ice, when I studied with Wim Hof, I said to the person next to me before I'd gone in, I said, "Does anyone ever die from this?" And he goes, "Oh my God!" He goes, "I never thought about that." And then we go in, and I hadn't even like considered it but I was like, just the first thought I had before I went into this it was just full of ice. And it was like too late.
Mhm.
But the memories there are so set of just looking around at all these people who are both in a lot of pain, physical pain, but they're also quite high. And that pairing is really profound.
Tell me about clown church. What happens at clown church?
So Clown Church kind of came about because I was teaching clown, and there was the only time that this theater was available was Sunday mornings.
Mm.
And they said, would you want to like do it almost every Sunday, like just like a drop in? And I was like, people were asking me, yeah, could you do a drop in? I was like, I'll try it. So I just kind of tried this weekly drop in, and people were showing up. 20, 30 people were showing up regularly. And I would just show up and improvise with the room through warming them up, getting them altered. There's lots of ways to get altered. Sometimes it's through these, meditations. Sometimes it's through rituals. Once I felt they were altered, I had
Mm.
them start kind of working all at the same time. This is a Viola Spolin technique, which is people are paired up and they're all working at the same time.
Uh-huh.
So because when people are working at the same time, there's no viewer. And people go much deeper into the work. And you can feel the energy of the room of everyone kind of playing, and it would take more energy for you not to play. And so then there are all these pairs, and then I would walk around the room, and anything that was popping off, I would then turn everybody to watch that because that's already setting fire. And then
Ah,
they'd watch that scene, and then I'd side coach it, and they would have this like beautiful improvised scene in this altered state. And then I would just take it and go, and we'd go back into something movement driven, and everybody would move again. So I just made sure they never came out of the state. So it
mm.
was 2 hours of staying in a state, kind of creating little tiny pieces and then going back. And it was always different kinds of work, like different points of concentration, right? Whether we're working from embarrassment, whether we're working from a sense of going further physically than you normally go, like going to exhaustion. That's another way to find the clown.
Mm.
Exiting and entrances are a way to find the clown. There's lots of ways to find the clown. So we just play with different ways to get you to feel like, I'm lost. Yeah, good. Now we've started. You're lost. So I just started doing that, and then somebody called it Clown Church because it was Sunday mornings, and then it just sort of continued. And then COVID happened, and we did sort of online a little bit because there was still the hunger to just be together. And then I started doing it at parks during
Mm.
COVID. People
Mm.
would wear
Mm.
masks,
Mm.
and it just sort of continued. And then Clown Church, a few people from Clown Church started a group, and they said, would you direct us? So I started directing the Highland Park Clowns. They came out of Clown Church. And then it was like, the snowball effect. And then eventually one person from the Highland Park Clowns was like, why don't you teach at Esalen? I said, oh, I don't have the bandwidth. I was just doing so much. And I said, well, let me help. What if I help apply, This happens all the time where someone's like, what if I do? And I'm like, sure, you do it for me. Great. And then this amazing opportunity happens out of it. And Esalen has been such a thrill.
Jet, can we do a speed round?
Yes.
If someone listening feels like too serious or too tight or too armored, what's a tiny act of ridiculousness they could try today?
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is to breathe into the heart while keeping the face super soft. You're going to feel really dumb when you make this face so soft, the mouth is open, and then the heart is full of energy, full of light, and then you look at someone you know and love with that. You've dropped the armor of the heart, you've dropped the mask of the face, you will feel exposed.
You've done so much in so many mediums. What's one medium that you've never worked in but you want to before you die?
Ooh, I know for sure I want to spend more time in the great outdoors. So with what I'm doing right now, it lacks the great outdoors. So whether that's like rock climbing, spending more time underwater, I do want to spend more time in nature. It's the thing that calls to me.
Tell me about one time that you really, really bombed.
Oh, yeah. I recently, within the past year, did this Italian man who it worked once. And I was like, and here's the best part. I thought I got it. Right? I was like, hey, I love this. He had this kind of froggish voice, like, oh, this is so crazy. And I was like, I love him. He's like basically like a Roberto Benigni love. I would climb over the audience and I'd just be like, I love you. But it hit once and I thought I had it.
Yes.
And then I went and did it again, thinking I had it, and I did not have it. And the audience didn't care. And I had gone on some sort of autopilot and I couldn't get him to work. Whoa. And I was humbled. I mean, I walked out with my head down going, I know nothing. And wow. It's because I didn't play the room. I played the concept. I played the guy, where the first time I played him, I was playing the room, you know?
Yeah. What's the craziest thing about being on a reality TV show like Joe Schmo?
Just the constant questioning of, is this okay to do to someone? Is a prank.
Explain the Joe Schmo idea.
So it's kind of like if you've seen Jury Duty, it's this idea that one guy is on a competitive reality show and he thinks everybody else is on it. It's kind of like a Squid Games. But what he finds out at the very end is everyone's actors, creating a world for him, kind of like the Truman Show. Now, the good news is at the end, when it's exposed, he loved it. He was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We're lucky. But, for some people, that could really be a huge shock that people invested 12 days to pull one long prank on him. I personally love being pranked, and I love that. So I go in with that lens of like, everybody loves to be pranked. They did do a psychological evaluation on him beforehand, which made me feel better that it was like, he's stable. And we're still friends, So, but during it, you're like, have we gone too far? You start a prank and then you don't know what's too far. And I lived with one of my best friends and all we ever did was prank each other. And, you ask how people can be less serious. It's like live with someone where all you're doing is just going back and forth pranking each other. It makes the environment so light and so fun because it's a language of love, because it's a language of play. But it does not help your survival at all. And that's why I think it's about deep love.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Esalen. This show is produced in conjunction with Shira Levine. Our theme song is by Nico Holloman. Until next time, be well.